The wind had teeth that night. It tore across the empty street, rattling loose boards and slamming the church door till it cried out like a dying thing. In that sound, Clara Hayes kept her hands steady on the porch rail, eyes fixed on the horizon. The storm was crawling closer, black clouds rolling over the desert like a slow herd of cattle. Her lantern swung against the post, its glow trembling on the grit that coated her face. The chickens were restless. The gate kept creaking, and somewhere out in the dark a coyote wailed. Then came hoofbeats. Slow, heavy, a rider cutting through the storm's whisper. Clara's fingers tightened around the lantern handle. She didn't move, didn't call out. The horse appeared first, dark, soaked, ribs glinting under flashes of lightning. The man on its back leaned low, a shadow slick with rain and dust. He reined in at her fence. Didn't speak, just raised his hat with a gloved hand and nodded once. His face was half hidden beneath the brim, but the lightning caught a scar tracing down his jaw. "Ma'am," he said, voice low as gravel, "could I trouble you for some water?" Clara hesitated. The wind shoved at her skirt, trying to push her back inside. The man's horse snorted steam into the cold. Finally, she stepped down and lifted the gate latch. "There's a pump by the trough," she said. Her voice surprised her, steady, calm, though her heart drummed like hooves in her chest. He dismounted, boots sinking in mud. Each movement was measured, respectful, but something in the way he carried himself set the air tight. He drew water, gave it to the horse, then drank from his cupped hand. The rain started to fall harder, slicking his coat to his shoulders. "You ridin' far?" she asked, watching him from the porch. "Far enough." He glanced toward town. Nothing but a smear of dim lamps through the storm. Her Dustwater was still standing. "Barely," she said. Lightning cracked again. For a second, his hand shifted in the glow, and she saw the brand on it. A mark burned deep into the flesh, curling like an old wound that refused to heal. Gunfighter's mark. She'd seen one once before, on a man laid out in the undertaker's window. He caught her look and lowered his hand. "I'll be on my way, ma'am," he said quietly. She should have let him go, should have turned and shut her door. But the way he said it, gentle, like an apology, hung in the space between thunderclaps. "Storm will break hard," she murmured. "You can shelter in the barn. Ain't much, but it's dry." He paused, nodded once, and led his horse through the gate. As he disappeared into the dark, the old church bell shivered in the wind, one faint clang echoing over the hollow. And Clara stood there a long while, lantern shaking in her hand, while behind her, the storm began to sing. The sun hit hard that morning, bleeding across the yard where Elias swung a hammer against a busted fence post. Each strike cracked through the quiet, echoing off the hills. Clara handed him another nail, her sleeves rolled and her palms raw from work. "You don't talk much," she said. He didn't look up. "Ain't much worth saying." The wind carried the dry smell of sage. The horse in the paddock pawed at the dirt. From the far ridge came a faint clatter of hooves, a rider heading toward town, dust plume trailing behind. Clara watched it fade, then turned back to the fence. "You fix things like you've done it all your life," she murmured. "Mostly broke things," he said, trying to balance it out. By evening, the air was still, heavy with heat. The two of them sat by the porch rail, sharing coffee gone cold. The world seemed to have stopped breathing. In town, a dog barked once, then silence swallowed a whole. Then gunfire. Two sharp cracks rolled over the desert. Elias's head lifted fast. He set his cup down without a sound, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. "Stay inside," he said. Before she could speak, he was already saddling his horse, moving with the precision of a man who'd done it too many times. She watched him ride into the fading light, a streak of dust and iron will. The night swallowed him. Hours passed. The moon climbed over the barn, pale and cold. Then came the hoofbeats again, slow this time dragging. Clara stepped into the yard, lantern raised. Elias rode in, blood on his sleeve, face shadowed under the brim of his hat. "You hurt," she whispered. "Not mine." He slid down, stumbled once. "Don't ask what happened." She didn't. She just took his arm, led him inside. The silence between them was thick as smoke. She washed the blood away, the water turning pink in the basin. His eyes met hers once, a look that lingered longer than it should have. At dawn, the knock came. Sheriff Maddox filled the doorway, dust on his badge, 2 deputies behind him. His grin was all teeth. "Mornin', Miss Hayes. You seen a man riding through here last night? Calls himself Elias Boone." Clara's throat tightened. The sound of Elias breathing behind the wall felt louder than thunder. She forced a calm she didn't feel. "No one here but me, Sheriff." He studied her, eyes sharp. "Funny thing, fella Fitz has put a bullet in my deputy. I'd hate to think you're harboring that kind of trouble." Her hand stayed on the doorframe. "You done here, Sheriff?" A long beat. Then he smiled. "For now." When the horses faded from earshot, Clara crossed to the barn. Elias was there, hidden among the hay, hat in his hands. Their eyes met. The world outside felt a lifetime away. "Guess I brought my trouble with me," he said. She shook her head slowly. "Maybe it's the kind I don't mind keeping." The first shot tore through the stillness before sunrise. Glass shattered. Chicken screamed. Clara hit the floor, heart pounding. Outside, men's voices shouted through the fog of dust and gun smoke. "Come on out, Boone. Ain't nowhere left to run." Elias cocked his revolver, jaw set hard. He moved to the window, eyes cutting through the half-light. Sheriff Maddox stood in the yard, coat flaring, a rifle slung in his hands. 5 men behind him. "Stay down," Elias murmured. Clara rose anyway, her breath trembling. "You can't fight 'em all." He didn't answer. The hammer clicked back. "Ain't about fighting all of them. Just stopping one." Maddox's voice carried clear and cruel. "You hiding behind that barren widow, Boone? Or is she just another of your lost causes?" Elias's finger tightened. Clara stepped in front of him. "Don't," she whispered. "He wants you to shoot first." The sheriff laughed. "Ain't much use in a woman who can't give life, anyhow." The words struck deeper than any bullet. Clara's hand trembled, then steadied. She stepped out the door. "Sheriff Maddox," she called, her voice cold as the morning. "You best leave my land." He sneered. "Your land? Lady, everything here answers to me." Elias pushed through the doorway behind her, gun low at his side. The wind caught his coat. The rising sun caught the scar on his jaw. "This where it ends," he said. "Damn right it is," Maddox spat. The 2 men stared across the distance, maybe 30 paces, neither moving, neither blinking. The air was wire-tight. Then the sheriff's finger twitched. The guns roared. Smoke burst into the dawn. Maddox's first shot grazed Elias's arm. Elias fired back. One of the deputies fell, clutching his chest. Horses reared. Men shouted. Dust turned red. Clara ducked behind the porch beam, the splinters raining down. Elias stumbled, blood seeping through his shirt, but his eyes never left Maddox. The sheriff stepped forward, smiling. "You're dying, Boone. Should have left her to rot." He raised his rifle. Clara grabbed the fallen deputy's pistol. Her hand shook, then stilled. One breath, one aim, one pull of the trigger. The shot cracked sharp and final. Maddox staggered back, a red bloom spreading across his chest. He hit the dirt, face twisting in disbelief. Elias fell to his knees. Clara ran to him, catching him before he hit the ground. His eyes were dimming, breath shallow. "Clara," he rasped, fingers finding hers. "Told you, not Barren. Just waitin'." Her tears fell onto his cheek, hot against the dust. The morning light crept over the bodies, painting the desert gold. Somewhere far off, the church bell swayed in the wind, ringing once, soft, hollow, like a memory fading into silence. The hoofbeats came at noon. Slow, steady. Every strike echoed off the shuttered windows of Dustwater Hollow like a heartbeat remembered too late. Clara paused in the doorway of her ranch house, shading her eyes against the sun. A rider approached along the same road Elias once came down, dust curling around the horse's legs like ghosts. The wind carried the smell of sage and distance. The rider was a boy, no more than 10, maybe 12, hat too big for his head, coat too worn for his age. His eyes, though, were steady, familiar. He stopped at her gate without a word. The paint horse beneath him pawed once at the dirt, impatient. The boy looked up at her, voice quiet but certain. "I'm looking for my mother." The world seemed to hold its breath. A tumbleweed drifted across the road and vanished into the heat. Clara's hand rose to her chest, but she said nothing. From the saloon porch down the street, two old men leaned forward, whispering. "Ain't that Boone's horse?" one muttered. "Can't be, boy's too young." The other spat into the dust. "Folks said she couldn't bear no child. Guess folks been wrong before." The boy dismounted, boots touching the ground like he'd been born knowing how to stand on this land. A scar traced along his hand, faint, in the same place Elias bore his. He waited, patient, eyes locked on hers. Clara stepped forward, each footfall slow, careful, as if she might wake a dream. The wind picked up, tossing her gray hair across her face. "Who told you to come here?" she asked. The boy hesitated, glancing toward the horizon. Didn't need telling, just knew. Something in his tone, quiet, certain, settled deep in her chest. She reached out, brushing the dust from his cheek. The boy didn't flinch. Behind them, the old church bell gave a single soft clang, though no one had touched it in years. "You hungry?" she asked at last. He nodded. "Then come on," she said, voice trembling just once. "It's a long ride home." He followed her through the gate, leading the paint horse by the reins. When they reached the porch, he paused and looked back at the road, the same road that had taken Elias away. "Ma'am," he said. "What was his name?" She looked toward the mountains, where the sky burned gold with the dying sun. "Elias Boone," she whispered. "And he was brave." The boy nodded once, like a vow, and stepped inside. The storyteller's voice fades in with the wind. They said she was barren, that her heart was dry as the desert. But in Dustwater Hollow, a widow bore the child of a legend, not in pain, but in promise. And when the wind still carries her name through those red canyons, it don't whisper sorrow no more. It sings,